Welcome to Talkin' SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses all the latest in college football in the Southeast with the best analyst around. Now from the southeast corner of Alabama, a state that knows sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Talking SEC. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Run College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Woods Football. Got a fun show planned for you guys today on this Monday. I'm going to be joined by David Schultz from WNSP in Mobile, Alabama, where he is the host of The Game Plan from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. We will talk Auburn football, a lot to discuss with the Auburn Tigers. Will Bryan Harsin even still be the coach by the time you listen to this podcast? Who knows what is going on the Plains right now? And then also we will talk about the Senior Bowl that was in Mobile this past Saturday, the marquee event of all the college all-star games. So a lot of great content here. And, of course, after that, I will go around some news items from around the SEC over the last couple of days. But before we do that, let you guys know where you can find me and the podcast. You can find me on social media at PJordanSEC, which you see my Twitter handle down here. Talking SEC is also on Twitter at Talking SEC Pod. You can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And remember, now you can check the show out on YouTube as well on my personal YouTube account, Phillip Jordan Sports. And there is a Talking SEC YouTube page as well. And go check that out. And there's two ways you can get your name said on the show. You can either leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. We'll read it on a future edition of the show. Or go on YouTube. Leave a comment on any video. I'll see it, and then I will read that on a future edition of the show. Or you can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Now, let's talk Auburn football. Let's talk Senior Bowl with David Schultz from WNSP in Mobile. Everybody joining me on the show today is David Schultz. You can check him out on WNSP in Mobile, Alabama, every day from 3 to 6 on The Game Plan, also program director there. And David, appreciate you coming on and joining the show once again.
Thanks for having me, Phillip. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're recording this on Sunday. Nothing interesting has been going on in the state of Alabama the last week at all. I do not know what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes.
Yeah, we've been lacking everything. Phillip, it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, where I said and I was a pro Bryan Harsin hire. I thought it was a great job by Alan Green to go get a football coach after plan A didn't work. And that's when Derek Mason left. Mm-hmm. And I called it a disaster. All right. And then some players like Lee Hunter's leaving. What's going on? Then Austin Davis leaves. And then we get last week. And it has spiraled downhill very quickly in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, it felt like last year when he got hired, this was Alan Green's guy. And
right.
Everything, it was not who the board wanted. Because, last year, all you heard about when he got hired, all you heard was Kevin Steele. Like they wanted him. And then I wonder if that name's going to be popping back up here shortly.
Well, but that's after all the Napiers of the world turned the job down because they didn't want to answer to those boosters.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This isn't a new problem for Auburn.
No,
this has been here. I'm 35. I've been really paying attention to prayer probably about last 20 years. I remember Tuberville. They tried to get rid of him, Jetgate, and he fought it off and went undefeated 6 straight times beating Alabama. Gene Chizik deal was different. Gus always had to fight it. And then in year one of Harsin, he doesn't have – you can obviously tell there's no support there for him. And like you said, National Signing Day, last week didn't sign a single player. And then the coaches leaving and players leaving. And you see mixed bag of former players saying what they're saying about him, the current players standing up for him. And he's in Mexico. So it's just a mess. Just, your time just covering sports. Have you ever seen a college program kind of – with this kind of power structure where it's like this, where there's always something going on, it seems like, especially with the football side.
I don't know if it's a power structure like this, but Miami has been a mess for a good 20 years now, right? Miami's been a mess. We'll see what Mario Cristobal does. They, sorry for the term, but Miami always seems to half-ass it is the problem with who they go get. And now it appears they seem to be heading in the right direction. So we'll see what happens there. But you you went over a bunch of different things. So kind of let's recap, because you said when Bryan Harsin got it, he didn't really have the support of the boosters, and everything was heading in the right direction. Although I guess Bobo wasn't on the same page and Mason wasn't on the same page from the beginning. And I liked the Mason hire. I thought that was a good thing. I did not like the Mike Bobo hire.
I didn't either.
I mean, Auburn hires Bryan Harsin for the Bryan Harsin offense. I don't want the Mike Bobo offense, and I don't want the Bryan Harsin / Mike Bobo offense. I want the Bryan Harsin offense. All right, that's what we want. So I hammered that, and then you look up, and they're 6-2.
Yeah.
Bo Nix is, beating Ole Miss. He's beating Arkansas. Looking pretty good. Then they laid an egg against A&M, and so bad Bo Nix showed up, and A&M's defense is pretty good. And Auburn's defense played well that day because the offense, did nothing at all. And so they lose A&M. They're hammering Mississippi State, and where everything goes wrong is when Bo Nix breaks his ankle. Because the defense couldn't stop anybody when they got the big lead, and TJ Finley couldn't handle what was happening. And the team didn't make the adjustment to all right, we're going from a Bo Nix and, kind of balanced rushing attack to we really should be relying on Tank Bigsby. We really should be relying on Jarquez Hunter to carry the team, and TJ Finley will be the game manager type of deal, right? So you lose to a game to South Carolina that you shouldn't have lost. You lose to Alabama, a game that you were winning 10-0 with 12 minutes left to go. Should never throw another pass in the entire game, and yet they lose the game. Then they lose to Houston when what did TJ Finley throw? 60, 70 passes? I don't understand why he's throwing all these passes, most of them 5 yards over the heads of everybody. And, you should have just been handing the ball off again. And so now he's looking, we're talking about the bowl game on the air. We just kind of want Auburn to show up. And my thing was, it's more important for them not to lose the game than to win the game, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't. But because I was concerned, because you could see it coming, if they lose to, after the loss to South Carolina, you lose to Alabama, and then you lose the bowl game, you're looking at 5 straight losses heading into the offseason. Not great, Bob. Not great. So then Bobo's fired immediately. Derek Mason goes down, or he leaves. And in between that, you go hire a quarterback coach who's never been in college and coaching. He's never called a play. And you're bringing him to Auburn in a really tough spot to recruit, right? Not only are you always going up against Alabama and Georgia, but now you got Napier, who didn't want your job, is recruiting in Florida. Norvell seems to have settled things down at Florida State, so you got to deal with him. And now Cristobal is going to keep some of those South Florida guys in South Florida. So it's a mess. And you got Lane Kiffin you're dealing with. And so now you don't have an offensive coordinator. All right. Now let's move. And that's just a mess, right? So Mason leaves and the offensive coordinator leaves. Now let's go to signing day, where, Phillip, it was an historic signing day for Auburn. I believe Auburn is the first team in modern signing day history to finish the day with less guys than they started with. They signed absolutely nobody, although they did have 18 guys from the previous signing day, the early signing day. But they lose Johnson, the wide receiver. And then, that was Wednesday. The day before, Harsin's down here. Harsin's at practice at the Senior Bowl. He's on the summit, at the summit, and I don't know if anybody's figured this one out, but I don't know the last time that the Auburn coach and the Alabama coach were on the stage at the same time. But that's exactly what happened. So then he doesn't sign anybody. Wake up to salacious rumors Thursday morning. And maybe it was Wednesday morning. And by Thursday, the rumors were all over the place. All right.
Yeah, they were.
Then you get a Friday article that, Harsin's going to, go all puffy chest and say, this is ridiculous. I know what I'm doing. You got to let a coach coach. First of all, why is he on vacation? All right. I just read that he missed a high school coaches clinic in Georgia. What's he doing? He signs no players, doesn't have an OC, but you know what? I need my downtime. So that's not a great look. Also, How cocky can you be that you're the only person on the face of the earth that can coach Auburn? You just lost 5 in a row, which includes Mississippi State, South Carolina, and Houston. That's not exactly, what Alabama played in basketball, right? Recently, Baylor, Kentucky, and Auburn, right? And not exactly a gauntlet of teams there that you lost to with, A&M and Alabama thrown in. So he has and I know all these guys have a massive ego, but you would think if you've lost 5 straight and all of those were second half leads, you may be humbled just a bit. All right. So then, part of that with the salacious rumors, he's probably, if they're not true, and obviously that's what Harsin wants us to believe, that he's going to get defensive, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got a lot of things going on. And Phillip, I'm one of those guys that, people say, well, that's excuses. When your quarterback breaks his ankle, that's a reason.
Yeah.
When your only quarterback breaks an ankle, that's a reason. Okay. A&M was playing with a backup quarterback all year long, and I know they beat Bama, but he went 8-4.
Sure did.
Jimbo didn't have that great a season because he had his backup quarterback. So those are reasons, not excuses. Forget the next man up. If the backup quarterback was better, he'd be starter, right?
Yep.
There's only one position, but there's a reason he's the backup quarterback for the most part. So I believe those are reasons, not necessarily excuses. But there's a whole lot to unpack in this whole mess. And it just feels like, I think my producer, Stephen Root, was on it first. It kind of just feels like the Auburn boosters were like, this is the I told you so portion of the show.
Yeah.
Wanted your guy, Alan Green. See what happened? Oops. Now we're going to do it our way. That's where I think we are right now with Auburn.
Yeah, I feel like, we meant they're 6-2. I even remember seeing people mention at the time, is Bryan Harsin SEC Coach of the Year at that point at 6-2.
Oh.
I mean, his name has been mentioned along with Lane Kiffin and other coaches in the conference. And then let's just say if they only lose Alabama the rest of the way, we're not having this conversation. No one is.
Or if they beat Alabama.
Oh, if they beat Alabama and just go 7-6,
right?
No one's saying that, because the thing with Auburn versus Alabama's all about winning a national championship. They've lost to Auburn one year and still won the title. That's what their priority is.
Right.
One thing I will say is a negative about Auburn and a lot of their fans, boosters, important people, it don't matter if he win the national title, just beat Alabama. So had he beat Alabama, this would be a mute conversation. It wouldn't be happening.
Sure. Oh, we forgot the whole Bo Nix transferring thing. Mr. Auburn actually leads the program, which probably does not help Bryan Harsin. So that's another situation. He doesn't have 5 wide receivers on the team, but he's got 5 quarterbacks on the team.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and who knows by the time we had this conversation on Sunday, who knows what's going to happen by the time the podcast does get released. So it's a very it's like I told you off the air, it's never a dull moment.
And I got to figure, already 18 players have left or 20 players have transferred out or something along those lines. 2 more quarterbacks are going to go, right? I mean, he's not going to have all 5 quarterbacks be there when fall starts, right?
You're not because Calzado's got several years eligibility left. You've got Davis, who was a freshman last year. You've got another one coming in. You got 2 of them. I mean, you got several quarterbacks in there that are all around the same age. You can't play all of them.
I don't think Finley and Calzado are going anywhere because they got to sit out a year, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Finley. I didn't even mention Finley there. I guess I just done thrown him out of the quarterback competition altogether, the way he played in those games with Auburn. Let's talk a little bit. It was fun there in Mobile this past week. The Senior Bowl. Sure. Always a great event. The marquee of the All-Star games. Talking about that, just, kind of away from the Senior Bowl, was it kind of odd to you that this year they decided to play the East-West Shrine game and have that practice going on the exact same time the Senior Bowl practices were going on?
Yeah, that's a whole thing, right? The East-West Shrine game trying to come after the Senior Bowl. I'm not sure that Vegas is the best place to have a college All-Star game. That may be fun for the staffs, may be fun for the media, but I'm not exactly sure you want to have an All-Star game for your college players in a place like Vegas, right? It seems a little bit strange for me. It's not that we can't have a good time here in Mobile, but obviously a little bit different of a good time.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Right. So, yeah, I don't, it feels like the East-West Shrine game's trying to come after the Senior Bowl. We'll see how that plays out. They, I didn't see anybody from the Senior Bowl going to play in the East-West Shrine game. I saw a bunch of guys from the East-West Shrine game come play in the Senior Bowl, either instead of or afterwards. So we'll see how that works out moving forward.
Oh, well, Senior Bowl with the game on Saturday and everything, you may have heard coming out of the week. Anybody in particular, or any big takeaways from it for you?
Well, a couple of things. We got some edge rushers. The kid Johnson from Florida State, he practiced all week, did not play in the game. Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma had a big ball game. Kenny Pickett, 6 for 6, 89 yards and a touchdown. He had a good ball game. I think the consensus for me is that there was no consensus on the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That it was Malik Willis, Gap, and everybody else. That it was Kenny Pickett, Gap, and everybody else. So, that's the consensus, is that there was no consensus when it comes to the quarterbacks. That's what it seemed. That's what it seemed to me.
So Kenny Pickett's hand size did not seem to cause any problems for you.
Yeah, so hand size seems to be a thing. The only time I'm talking about hand size is at the NFL, at these kind of things at the combine and the draft, right? Same thing for Roger McCreary, Auburn's Roger McCreary from right here in Mobile. I guess he's got short arms that you need at least 30-inch arms or something along those lines. You can either cover somebody or you can't cover somebody. Yeah. And from what I've seen, Roger McCreary can cover somebody. So, we'll see if that hurts him. If he ends up being a nickelback, or does he end up in the second or third round? We'll see. Also, there was a lot of, speaking of McCreary, a lot of local flavor down here. Jalen Tolbert went to McGill-Tulane. We had Bayless Jones, went to Saraland. Neil Farrell went to Murphy Panthers, just around the corner from where I live. And then Trey Berry from Boston College in Spanish Fort over in Baldwin County. He arrived late. So there was actually more, including Auburn's Roger McCreary, only 3 Alabama-Auburn players, including McCreary, 5 local Mobile Baldwin County players, including McCreary. So that was pretty cool. And because Nagy doesn't hand these things out as a way to attract fans. This is about the draft. This is about who the NFL wants to see. And so it used to be, if you were a senior at Alabama and Auburn, you played in the game. And if you were local, that was even a bigger of a bonus. Nagy doesn't hand these things out like candy. So, these guys, I would presume all of them are got a really good shot at getting drafted, some higher than others, obviously.
Yeah, and with McCreary, I think he really helped himself out with his performance in the Iron Bowl, in that one against Minchie. He did a really good job against him. And he just overall this year, because I just don't, the thing about him, he doesn't have a lot of interceptions because quarterbacks don't throw his direction often.
Right.
And so I always felt like all year, and even last year, this was one of the more underrated players in the country. And maybe going back to Auburn, if they had a better record, you would have seen that a little bit more. But what he's able to do, and then you had, like I said, Bayless Jones, Tennessee. He had 4 catches, 53 yards in the game.
Yep.
Jalen, Tolbert there, South Alabama product. He played well. So, and that was cool because a lot of times, watching this game, you'll see maybe there's one guy that's from the area. But like I said, having 4 or 5, it was a tremendous year to have all the local products there.
Yeah, it really was. I didn't get the picture of the defense, but at one time, Tolbert was lined up on one side and Bayless Jones was lined up on the other side. So somewhere in the game, probably McCreary was lined up in a corner and Neil Farrell was lined up, at the defensive line. And probably, Trey Berry was also with those other guys. So, that's a lot of fun having those local guys here.
You talk about Malik Willis and with him and, just Auburn history there too as well. Auburn is all over this podcast today.
Right.
But with him, at Liberty, only threw 4 passes, but he ran for 54 yards. Almost had that touchdown at the end of the quarter, way it switches over and everything. With him, what is there anything watching him play? Do you think he needs to work on, or what do you see as him as a pro prospect?
Well, he's got to work on his accuracy, right? Someone said he had the 5 best throws on Tuesday, but he had the 5 worst throws as well. So, I did an interview earlier on Sunday, and he compared him to Josh Allen, and that's a great comparison. Same with Sam Howell. So Malik Willis, Sam Howell, and Josh Allen all had really good years the year before they came out because of their talent around them, right? Mm-hmm. All the talent in North Carolina played the Senior Bowl last year and then went to the pros. Josh Allen had a bunch of guys leave, either go pro or just ended their eligibility at Wyoming. And the same thing for Malik Willis. A lot of his talent from Liberty was gone. I don't know how much Malik Willis you saw this year, Phillip, but he had to throw the ball. He had to run the ball. He had to tackle. He had to cover. He had to kick. He had no help at all. And that's a lot of pressure on somebody like that. He loses to Monroe. Even my Orange got him on a goal line stand up there at Syracuse, New York. So there was just a lot of pressure on Malik Willis, and he just didn't have the help talent-wise. Now, can he be a Josh Allen? Because, even as just a couple of years ago, I didn't think you could teach accuracy, and Josh Allen has.
Yeah,
you're wrong, right? He's developed outstanding accuracy in the last couple of years. So, is Malik Willis going to start day one of his NFL career? Probably not. But if he could work out that accuracy issue, he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL for a long time to come.
Well, definitely. It feels like, I think now everybody's going to say, okay, who's this year's Mac Jones? A guy that maybe doesn't have the greatest ceiling, but someone that, his floor is not that low where you can go ahead and plug him in. Feels like everybody feels like Kenny Pickett could be that guy.
Yeah. I'm going to see my guy Bailey Zappi. I'm going to see what he can do.
Tremendous.
All right, a wide open offense. Was told they didn't run the ball at all out of Western Kentucky. All kinds of record-setting year. Let's see what he does if he sits for a Patrick Mahomes year or an Aaron Rodgers couple of years. See what he does in a couple of years. He could very well have like a Tony Romo kind of career. That's kind of small school, out of nowhere, under the radar. Although he's not really under the radar anymore. We'll see what Bailey Zappi does because. He's probably not going until day 3, and he's going to be a solid backup for a little bit, and then we'll see if he gets a shot.
It'll be interesting what happens with him because tremendous, just the year, and just Western Kentucky, what they've done, all the records. They wrote 62 touchdown passes this year, and then just finally let's wrap things up. Just overall SEC, any other SEC guys really stand out to you at the Senior Bowl?
That's a good question. No, the Baylor guys stuck out, right? Abram Smith had hit a couple of good runs, almost got into the end zone. Great story. Running back, linebacker, running back. Tariq Woolen out of UTSA ran the fastest out of anybody, I think, on like Thursday or something along those lines. He's a wide receiver, turn corner. He's got wide receiver size at 6'4", and he can fly. There certainly was an abundance of SEC players here. I think Ed Ingram, he may have had like an up and down day because they were road grading and then they gave up a bunch of sacks. So, and they seem to be beating the LSU offensive linemen. Well, the LSU defensive guys, Neil Farrell and Damone Clark had good days. I think Clark was in on a sack. I think those two guys just made a ton of money this year, right? I happen to watch the LSU postgame show because they do it in a bar and they seem to be drinking whiskey and having a good time. And it didn't matter if LSU won, lost, blew somebody out or got blown out. It was just like, well, Damone Clark and Neil Farrell had more good ball games, right? And Damone Clark was invited originally, a little bit late of an invite for Neil Farrell. I think he was one of those guys that, came here instead of the East-West Shrine game. I think they balled out. I think they're going to, Damone Clark's probably day 1 or day 2 guys, probably same for Neil Farrell. So probably not day 1, but, maybe day 2.
It's going to be interesting how all them guys do. And this is just the first part of the process. They got the combine and then you got the pro day. So it's a long process where we get to the draft with these guys. I'm sure the SEC would dominate on the draft as they normally do. Usually. And anyways, too, also, David, I appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, again, recorded this on a Sunday, taking time out to come on. And listeners, viewers, want to check you out. Where can they find you? And where can they listen to you down in Mobile?
WNSP. You can search for our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter, SchultzCast, SCHULTZ CAST. That's where you can do it. All right. I appreciate it, Phillip. That was great.
I appreciate it, David. And
Bryan Harsin, head coach, when we do this again?
Probably not.
I'm going to go out on the limb and say yes.
Okay. So I will have to save
unless it's like 2024.
But it won't be that long. So if whatever happens now, I'll have to save this portion of the video and the pod, and I have to replay it next time I have you on. But it's been fun. It's been fun. Glad to have you on once again, and look forward to doing it again sometime down the road.
Thanks, Phillip.
And thanks once again to David Schultz for coming on the show today. Really appreciate him taking the time. A lot of interesting and really good points there about Auburn. Interesting analysis there of the Senior Bowl. It's going to be very interesting where a lot of these guys goes, particularly the SEC players are where they will be headed into the NFL draft. Like I said there, this is just part one of their draft process here postseason. You got the All-Star games, then you got the Combine, then you got Pro Day. So it'll be a lot of time still between now and the draft to improve your draft stock and all that good stuff. Some other stuff, some more on the Auburn situation as we're recording here, like I said, on a Sunday evening. You don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, as it's recording, Bryan Harsin is still the head coach at Auburn. You read certain places, you can start to think, well, I mean, will he be back? If they don't fire him, just how do you go back to that when the board of trustees or the people in power do not have your back, and that you're always going to be looking over your shoulder, a lot like Tommy Tuberville had to do when he was at Auburn. I mean, that was constant for him. I mean, a big reason why he kept his job for as long as he did, because he kept beating Alabama. Obviously, they didn't like Gus Malzahn, and just Bryan Harsin obviously was never the guy they wanted. I mean, the Kevin Steele stuff was there, and the Kevin Steele stuff is probably going to come back again if they get their way and he's out of there. And, just all the internet rumors, I ain't going to touch on them here, certain stuff that's been said. But this is nothing off brand for Auburn, though. The power structure up there is weird, and it's not good. It's not healthy. It's toxic. I'll just be honest. I believe the power structure at Auburn is very toxic. And what happens going forward with them, I don't know. I mean, Allen Green's got 1 year left on his contract, and he just made the big move in the good news of getting Bruce Pearl back, which they won close game against Georgia, but they won this Saturday. It should stay number one. Only one loss on year, undefeated in regulation. Was Auburn basketball. But man, it's tough for him. Harsin, he really went out on him for Harsin, and if that doesn't work out, then Allen Green be heading somewhere else. It's a lot of stuff going on there at Auburn. It's going to be keeping an eye on. And I'll say this: if something happens this week, it'll be solo, but I'll do an emergency pod. I'll jump on. I may do it live. I may do a live podcast if something like that does happen. And over the last couple of days, you've seen Auburn players, some for against. Mostly the ones that are against, I will say, are players no longer there. They have left the program. I've seen a lot of Auburn guys say we don't want those guys here. Bryan Harsin is trying to change the culture. He's our coach. He's not a babysitter. You've seen a lot of that. Derek Hall and Nick Browns, they're ones that's really stood up, among other guys. I mean, there's a lot of Auburn players that have really stood up. And then you got guys like Smoke Monday, Lee Hunter, who's headed to UCF. Being the ones critical of Bryan Harsin. And it's kind of a back and forth. And that's the thing, too. It's all about talking about the board and athletic director Allen Green. What about the players? These are the ones that are really going to suffer through all this. And, it would be kind of expected if Bryan Harsin's let go. You're going to even have more players leave the program, coaches. And, look, let's be honest. March isn't far, and spring practice starts in March. So, it's interesting times for the Auburn Tigers. So, obviously there with David, we talked about the Senior Bowl. You had the Shrine Bowl on last Thursday. The West one got that one 25-24. I was looking through some stats. Really only one pops out at me, name. South Carolina tight end Nick Muse. He had one catch for 18 yards in that one. Senior Bowl, a couple stats out there, which we talked about a lot. Alabama running back Brian Robinson, not many yards, 6 carries, 18 yards. Florida running back Damian Pierce, he had 16 yards on 5 carries in that one. And we talked about Velus Jones a little bit, who is a Mobile product there. He had 4 catches, 53 yards in the game. So, like I said, once again, interesting what happens with all those guys, SEC guys, moving forward in the draft process. Now we're going to go over, and we're going to have some audio here in this segment. Some recruiting stuff. Signing day was last Wednesday. And, you know, anybody that's followed me a long time, and I've admitted this. I've admitted this about myself. I am not your go-to guy for recruiting. Current stuff, other news around the conference or what's going on, I'm pretty good with that. Recruiting, I can give you rankings. I'm not going to sit here and try to break down these kids coming in. That's just not my strength. I know that, but I will go over recruiting rankings and some interesting stuff that was said by the team that got number one here. The Texas A&M, which some people are saying is the greatest recruiting class of all time. Here's when I hear that, here's what I want to say about that. And that is, that's fine. They're highly ranked. Terrific. Good job, Jimbo Fisher. But I will say this about that. We'll see what happens when they get on the field. That's my thing. We'll in 4 years or 3 years, will we look at the classic? Yeah, that is the greatest recruiting class of all time. Have they brought national championships or college football playoff appearances to Texas A&M? Then that's me, and that's kind of why I'm not big into recruiting. I want to see the players on the field actually playing college football. Let's see how that goes. That's why I see that. I'm like, congratulations. That's awesome. Good for you. But I'm not overly excited because Texas A&M got what is being said, the number one recruiting class. But we'll circle back to A&M in a second. Alabama came in number 2 overall in the country. Georgia was number 3 in the country. They had LSU come in at 12th nationally, but that's 4th in the SEC. Brian Kelly been getting a lot of guys in the transfer portal. Kentucky at 13. Kentucky's coming. They're bringing in talent. Stoops keeps bringing in that talent. They're just in this recruiting rankings and SEC teams, they're second in the East. I'm not saying they're about to knock off Georgia. I do not believe that. If you ask me right now, Georgia's going to win the East next year. But Kentucky, they may have a stranglehold for now, on that number 2 spot in the SEC East. Missouri comes in at 14th, 6th in the conference. Tennessee, 7th in the conference in recruiting. Yeah, Auburn didn't sign a single player last week. They are 8th in the conference, 18th overall. Florida improved on their standing. They were at last at one point at the early sign-up period. They come in at 19. Ole Miss, they're the next team in, 24 overall. Lane Kiffin has been jumping into transfer portal a lot. South Carolina, 26. Shane Beamer's catching that momentum from last year. Look, South Carolina on paper should not have been a 6-win team, 6-7-win team. They won a bowl game. But Shane Beamer, they found ways to win. They got to a bowl game. They won the bowl game against North Carolina. Tremendous job by Shane Beamer year one. Then Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt are how you wrap up with the SEC in recruiting. So now we're going to circle back to Texas A&M. So the whole Texas A&M, the greatest recruiting class of all time, all these players they brought in, 7 5-stars, 19 4-stars, some of the best players, obviously, in high school football going to play now at Texas A&M. And Jimbo Fisher was asked about some of that because there had been some speculation and some talk that perhaps there is some money being put up for A&M to go and get these guys that for them now to have the number one recruiting class. Here's a clip I got from the AL.com YouTube channel. This is Jimbo Fisher talking about those people saying that A&M had a pretty good amount of money they were able to give out these guys with NILs and such.
I'm going to say, and this is point blank. This is point blank to because here's my problem. There is no $30 million fund. There is no $5 million. There is no 10. This is garbage. Okay. And it pisses me off that people, and here it comes from a site called Bro Bible by a guy named Sliced Bread. Then everybody runs with it. So it's written on the internet as gospel. How irresponsible is that? I'm going to tell you, there's some very reputable writers in college football and sports that wrote it and have said it and have done things. That's unbelievable to me. When I first heard it, I laughed. I said, oh, yeah, what a clown. I mean, I didn't even think anything of it because I don't have social media. And it kept building, and lately I've heard more about it. To me, it's insulting to the players that we recruited that's why they would come here. You ever been to a game here? You ever come to school here and see the education? You ever talk about the 12th man, the Aggie Network when you're done? There ain't a better university in this country. And it's insulting to what you say. And all these, and we got writers who have said it and done it off Sliced Bread. A guy named Slice who made it up. Love to see who Sliced Bread is and put it out there with Sliced Bread. Let me find out where it comes from. And then to have coaches in our league and across this league say it, clown acts. All right? Irresponsible as hell. Multiple coaches in our league. And the guys griping about NIL, griping about transfer portal, using it the most and bragging about it the most. That's the ironic part. You want character? I'll take it with any of y'all. It's a joke. It does piss me off.
So, Jimbo Fisher, I have this question to ask you. And again, that came from AL.com's YouTube page, that audio did. I have this question for you, Jimbo Fisher. You do know you can do this now. NIL is legal. And, you know, it's kind of like Ole Miss. I mean, I know A&M's been pretty good at recruiting, but remember Ole Miss, Hugh Freeze, they started getting a little bit better at recruiting than they normally were used to. I'm just saying. And it's all my guys transfer portal. That was a direct shot at Lane Kiffin, without a doubt, because Lane Kiffin last week talked about how it was on a even playing field. Not everybody had the same, as he says, salary cap. And he made a joke, I believe it was a tweet actually, that Jimbo Fisher and A&M were going to have to go over the luxury tax with the players they were going to get. And it also in there, he talked about he knows what other coaches do. He has seen, you know, he just going to talk to them about that. Pretty much what Jimbo Fisher said there. And he took some swaps at Nick Saban too as well. And you know, the Bryce Young deal, you know, so Jimbo Fisher just really making a lot of friends here last week on National Signing Day. And we make friends here. We have plenty of friends here on the podcast, and that is you. And I appreciate you checking out. Full show on YouTube, video show. Doing that as well. It's the first time I've really done one of those. Up my game a little bit. Got some video editing software on the computer, so I'm able to do that now. So I hope you'll check out over on YouTube as well. Like I said, something happens with Auburn, I'll come back on here later on the week and do an emergency pod or live pod, just going over some things. Maybe do a live thing, maybe get some interaction from some listeners and some viewers. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is on Twitter at Talking SEC Pod. Of course, you can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. Check us out on YouTube, either at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel or at the Talking SEC YouTube channel. You leave a comment on any video, I will read it on a future edition of the show. And, of course, you can always email me at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Like I said, if something breaks with Auburn, I'll be back. If not, be next week. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Talkin' SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin' SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're talking SEC.